They didn't change suddenly. No, what you saw was not transformation. It was revelation. It wasn't a shift. It was a shedding. The mask slipped. The performance ended. And in that cold silence where you stared into their unfamiliar face you thought, what happened to them? But the better question is, what took so long for this truth to surface? Because change is never sudden. It brews quietly in the shadows, behind smiles, beneath kind words, under borrowed affection. And when it rises, it does not knock, it enters, unapologetically, and everything you thought was real dissolves. The illusion of consistency, they didn't become someone else, they stopped being who they were never meant to be. And that's the part we struggle with, because we fall in love with consistency. We trust patterns. We find comfort in repetition. When someone shows us kindness once, we hope they'll always be kind. When someone shows us loyalty, we hold on to that moment as proof, believing it will anchor the future. But what if the consistency we clung to was never real? What if it was just an act, carefully tailored to fit the situation, to earn your trust, to survive in a space they didn't belong in? See, people don't always reveal themselves to you immediately. Some wear masks for years, not to deceive but to be accepted, to be adored, to be admired. And the mask becomes their second skin, until it no longer serves them. And that's when the change comes, swift, sharp, silent. You think they changed suddenly, but they were simply removing the part of themselves that was meant for you, not for them. It hurts, doesn't it? Watching someone unravel from what you believed they were. But perhaps what's more painful is realizing how much we gave, how much we built, how much we loved. A version that wasn't built to last. It was a draft, not the full story. They adjusted their tone, their behavior, their morals, even their affections to keep the connection alive. But every performance has an intermission, and some never return after the break. So you ask, why did they change? But the truth is they didn't change. The truth simply grew too loud to hide. And maybe deep down you knew. Maybe there were flickers of truth, little cracks in the persona, the occasional coldness in the eyes, the missed calls, the sharp tone that didn't match the smile. But we're human. We justify what we fear. We silence what unsettles us. We fight for the version we fell in love with, and we overlook the one standing right in front of us. That's how the illusion of consistency survives with our help, with our hope, with our refusal to let go of who we thought they were. So no, the change wasn't sudden. It was delayed. It was postponed by your kindness, your patience, your grace. But truth does not remain buried forever. It rises, and when it does, it asks you not to beg for the past, but to accept the present. The illusion is over, and now you see them not as you hoped they would be, but as they truly are. Let that be your clarity, not your wound. The expiration of pretending has an expiration date. Even the most skilled actors can't stay in character forever. There comes a moment, subtle, quiet, almost unnoticeable, when the mask begins to slip, not because they were caught, but because they grew tired of holding it up. The truth is, pretending is exhausting. It's not a performance done for joy. It's a performance done for survival, to gain approval, to feel needed, to be wanted. But eventually, the cost of the act becomes too high, and the energy it takes to be someone they're not drains them from the inside out. That's when you begin to feel it, the change, not loud, not dramatic, but present, a delay in their replies, a shift in tone, a certain coldness in their warmth, and you ask yourself, what did I do wrong? But this isn't about you. This isn't about your worth, your love, your loyalty. This is about them growing tired of the image they created to keep you close, the version of themselves that they knew you would trust, admire, maybe even love. It was never built to last, because it wasn't real. And the truth is, people can only fake goodness for so long. They can only mirror your values, your kindness, your depth until the weight of the lie begins to crush them. And when it does, they don't confess. They shift, they retreat. They rewrite the story in their favor. Suddenly, you become too much. You become the reason they pull away. But what's really happening is simple. The pretending has reached its end. The role they played for you has become unbearable. It no longer benefits them. It no longer suits their desires. So they step back, not out of cruelty but out of convenience, because being real for them means letting go of the performance. And with it letting go of you, and that's where the sting lies, not in the rejection, but in the realization that you never really knew them. You only knew the version they wanted you to see. That curated persona, shaped by your hopes and sustained by their fear of being seen for who they truly were. But now the act is over, and you are left standing in the silence of what was never authentic. Don't blame yourself for believing. That wasn't weakness, that was sincerity. You gave them space to be genuine, and they chose a mask. And when the mask fell, so did the illusion. That's not your failure. That's their truth finally stepping into the light. So don't chase the performance. Don't grieve the actor. What you saw was never yours to keep. What's real never needs to pretend. Comfort reveals character. Comfort is the great revealer. Not pain, not stress, not even conflict. It's comfort, that quiet, deceptive stillness that unlocks the real character beneath the surface. Because when people no longer feel the need to impress you, when they no longer fear losing you, when they believe they have secured your loyalty, that's when the mask slips off, not violently, not dramatically, just slowly, like a curtain drawing open at the end of a show. And suddenly, you see them not the version they wanted you to believe in, but the one they've been hiding behind charm, warmth, and convenience. See, people will often behave well in the beginning, not because it's who they are, but because the stakes are high. They want to be chosen. They want access to your heart, your time, your energy, so they adapt. They become who they think you need, but comfort changes the game. Once they feel they've secured a place in your life, once they believe they're no longer at risk of being left, that's when the truth begins to leak. The tone sharpens, the effort fades, the kindness turns into obligation, and you sit there wondering, where did the person I met go? But the better question is, were they ever truly here? What you're seeing now, the coldness, the dismissiveness, the sudden distance, it's not new. It's just finally unhidden. Comfort doesn't change people. It frees them. It strips away the performance and reveals the core. And sometimes that core is selfish. Sometimes it's indifferent. Sometimes it has no intention of loving you the way you deserve to be loved. That realization hurts deeply, because we've been taught to associate time with truth. The longer someone stays, the more real it must be, right? But time doesn't always reveal growth. Sometimes it only deepens the disguise, until comfort makes hiding unnecessary. And here's the hardest part: it wasn't you that changed the dynamic. It was their comfort with you that changed their effort. And once they felt safe enough to show their true self, they assumed you'd stay anyway. That's what makes it so painful. You were loyal to the version they pretended to be, and now you're being asked to tolerate the version they truly are. But you don't have to. You're allowed to say no. You're allowed to mourn the illusion and still walk away from the reality. Just because they revealed their truth doesn't mean you're obligated to carry it. Let comfort expose what it must, then let clarity guide what you do next. Because now you know who someone becomes when they no longer need to impress you is who they've been all along. You were not the problem, you were the mirror. They didn't pull away because you were too much. They pulled away because you reflected too much truth, too much depth, too much of what they were trying to avoid within themselves. You didn't cause their discomfort, you revealed it, and that's something many people cannot handle. Not because you were unkind, but because you were clear. You were honest. You didn't play the game. You saw them not just the version they wanted to project, but the contradictions, the quiet inconsistencies, the wounds they refused to name. And nothing terrifies someone more than being seen before they're ready to face themselves. You didn't break them, you simply stood too close to their hidden fractures. And when someone is living a life built on avoidance, on control, on curated perception, your presence can feel like a threat. Not because you attacked them, but because you didn't look away. You held up a mirror, gently, quietly, but persistently, and in that reflection they saw their emotional cowardice, their dishonesty, their unhealed history. You didn't make them insecure, you just didn't soothe their illusions. And so, rather than confront what was being revealed, they labeled you the problem, too intense, too emotional, too serious, too deep. They had to frame you as wrong because if you were right, they'd have to question everything they've built to protect themselves. That's how fragile ego works. It doesn't admit truth, it rewrites it. It pushes away anything that demands honesty. And so they withdrew, not because of who you are, but because of what your presence disrupted. You weren't difficult, you were illuminating, you didn't provoke, you exposed. And the truth is, not everyone is ready for the kind of connection that asks them to look inward. Some people want comfort, not growth. Surface, not substance. Applause, not accountability. And when they realize you won't shrink to fit their limits, they'll leave. Or worse, they'll stay and slowly punish you for the clarity you bring. But let this sink in, their reaction to your truth. Telling presence is not a reflection of your worth. It's a measurement of their readiness. And not everyone is ready to evolve. Not everyone is ready to stand in front of a mirror that doesn't flatter them. But you weren't built to dim yourself for the fragile. You weren't made to dull your insight so others feel less exposed. You were made to see clearly, to feel deeply, to speak honestly. And if that kind of presence sends people running, let them run. Not because you failed, but because they weren't prepared for someone who wasn't fooled by their mask. You were not the problem, you were the mirror, and mirrors don't cause cracks, they just reveal them. Let the curtain fall, then walk away. There comes a moment when the play ends, the lights dim, the actors step off stage. And you are left staring at the empty space, wondering if any of it was ever real. That's what it feels like when the mask finally drops, not with fury, but with quiet finality. The illusion has run its course. The performance is over, and now you face the truth in its rawest form. It hurts, not because they changed, but because you stayed so long hoping they wouldn't. You kept believing that the version you first met, the kind one, the attentive one, the one who saw you, was real. But they were just playing a role. And now, with the mask on the floor and the silence thick in the air, you're being asked to make a choice. Stay and pretend the act is still convincing, or walk away and accept what you now know. And here's the truth: walking away isn't weakness, it's clarity, it's choosing reality over fantasy, it's honoring your own eyes, your own heart, your own sanity. You are not obligated to keep participating in a performance that has lost its soul. You don't owe anyone your silence just because they fear your voice. You don't owe them your presence just because they once gave you their attention. When people reveal who they truly are, not in words, but in patterns, in detachment, in the way they stop choosing, you believe them. Don't rewrite the script. Don't beg for another scene. Let the curtain fall. Let the story end where it needs to. Because the more you hold on to the version of them that never existed, the more you betray the version of you that did. You showed up real. You stayed consistent. You loved with clarity. You offered truth. That is not weakness, that is power. And if they couldn't meet you there, if they couldn't stand in that light with you, then they were never meant to remain. Some people were only written into the opening chapters of your life. Trying to drag them into the rest of the book only delays the plot. So don't chase the mask. Don't grieve the illusion. Grieve what you thought it was, yes. But then rise, step back, reclaim your peace. You do not need to convince anyone to stay. You do not need to hold broken pieces, hoping they'll become whole again. Let the curtain fall, not in bitterness, but in grace, with your head high and your spirit intact. Walk away, not because you're defeated, but because you finally saw the truth clearly enough to stop pretending you didn't. And sometimes the most powerful thing you can do is simply leave the stage and never look back.